Welcome, 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 welcome. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be recording this and actually uploading it to YouTube. Some gameplay as well as just kind of talking about some One Piece theory stuff that we got going on. Because if you're not caught up, then this is your spoiler warning right here and now. I'll try not to talk about the current chapter because I know a lot of people really get frustrated with stuff like that. But I do want to actually kind of delve into this a little bit because a lot of really cool stuff has been happening recently. A lot of stuff's been lining up that's interesting. And I know anime only people are just now getting to Elbaf. They'll be getting their first episode of Elbaf is actually Sunday for me. So if you're watching this at some point in time, that's April the 5th. I don't want to spoil. So this is your spoiler warning. I will be talking about some stuff that's much later on in Elbaf. If you're not about that, then sorry. You've been warned, and I will continue to warn you. This is going to have spoilers. This will have spoilers. I repeat, this will have spoilers. Now we've gotten that out of the way. The current Shonen Jump translated chapter is chapter 1178 for One Piece. Now, the next chapter is chapter 1179, and there's already some spoilers out for that. I haven't seen a lot of them. Just a friend of mine has chatted me up a little bit about it. So there's good and there's bad. One moment. So there's, oh god, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. The simplest way to unpack it, however, is to kind of just start it off with a bang. We now know what Emu looks like. And that is kind of terrifying for a lot of people. I like the design, honestly. I'm not going to pull it up here. If you're interested in knowing what it is, then you can take your time, look it up for yourself, decide whether you like the design or not. I'm not here to debate that. I like it. That's all that matters to me. Now, as for what we know that Emu can and has previously Dormy reversing people. Now, if you're not familiar with who or what that ability is, allow me to elaborate a little bit further. The Dormy Reversi is a manipulation technique that seems to be exclusive to Emu. What it does is it allows Emu to take over someone's body, or rather force a demon upon them, and take their innermost desires and make them their outermost desires. As a result of this, it also enhances a lot of the evil stuff that people are capable of. This wouldn't be a problem, because everybody has a little bit of evil in them. Unless she did it on someone extraordinarily powerful. Which is exactly what happened. Now, again, I'm not going to try to get into too many of the spoilers here. Just know, extremely powerful person became even more extremely powerful. Because of course. Because of course they did. We now have a comprehensive discussion to have about just how ridiculous what's happening is happening. Where to begin? You know what? Let's begin with the revelation of the four gods of way back when they were mentioned. It was mentioned there were four gods back in Skypiea, I believe it was. We have the sun god Nika, the rain god, the forest god, and then the earth god, right? So, kind of using that framework, with that kind of framework in mind. I think it's chapter. Let me just pull up the chapter real. It was. Chapter 1138. So in chapter 1138, it was revealed that there is a mural of great importance to the historical side. Let me just move this over. I'm not playing the game yet, and I'd rather have to not bounce back and forth between stuff. So a mural was revealed in that chapter, at the very end of the chapter, last page of the chapter, that explained the first, second, and third worlds that have come about since the dawn of the One Piece universe. We start off with the first world, and I'll read the description of the first world and the events that happened in the first world as according to the Shonen Jump translation of the manga. So, without further ado, let's describe the first world. The first world. Within the earth, there was fire. Mankind succumbed to greed and touched the forbidden sun. The enslaved prayed, and the sun god appeared. The earth god raged, and with its serpent of hellfire, shrouded the world in death and darkness. And they will never meet again. So, let's unpack that a little bit. First things first, we're already mentioning two of the most powerful potential devil fruits that we've seen. One of them we know is devil fruit, the other one we don't know yet. Sun god, Nika, obviously, Luffy's devil fruit, and the earth god. We can kind of infer already that mankind succumbing to greed and touching the forbidden sun, by itself, that text doesn't really give you anything, right? The image alongside it, though, does. Let me see if I can do this. I don't want to just capture the whole thing out of that VC. Here. Let me switch to this. I want to. I really don't want to do game capture. I want to do screen capture, but I guess I can do game capture as well. Capture specific window. Let's see, where is it? What in why isn't it here? That's not the right shit. What the fuck? Capture any full screen application. No, that's not it. Specific window. Why are you not showing up? This is weird. I don't like this. Well, I guess we're just gonna have to live with that. Okay. I would have liked to be able to pull that up for you guys. I'll have to figure that out at some point, but for now, I'll just attempt to describe the mural. So, the mural on this particular page depicts a gigantic serpent fighting what appears to be a gigantic dragon, with a moon above that, and a boat, a bunch of people being pulled up from what appears to be an ocean of fire, or perhaps underground, with extremely advanced technology on the right, and essentially back to the Stone Ages on the left. One of the images on the left side of this particular page is a picture of what appears to be the gigantic boat from Fishman Island called the Noah. I believe that's what it's called. Very, very interesting. Lots of stuff going on here. So let's kind of explore this a little bit, right? We can infer pretty simply that the sun god is not depicted on this particular page. What we know is that on the next page, the sun god is depicted. Nika is depicted fighting what appears to be a gigantic version of a devil. So, Emu. Knowing this, and having this kind of knowledge, right, at where we are in the manga right now, there's quite a bit that is very, very cool here. What I would really like to kind of discuss and kind of open up about here is the second world specifically. Because if you're up to the current Shonen Jump manga, then you know that for some reason Chopper's attacks can cure demons. Again, spoiler, I've already given the spoiler warning. If you're still here, you're going to get spoiled. Sorry. So we know that Chopper can now, for some reason, inexplicably, we have no idea why, we can infer that he can banish demons from people that have been Dormi Reversied, which, you know, not necessarily super important overall. But what is important to note is the actual text for the second world here. So I'll go ahead and read that text real quick. The second world. Within the void there was breath. The forest god tamed demons, and the sun spread the fires of war. Those of the half moon dreamed. Those of the moon dreamed. Man killed the sun and became god. The sea god stormed, and they will never meet. So, to kind of unpack this, this heavily implies that Chopper does not wield the human fruit like we thought for so very long. I've always had a personal theory that it wasn't a normal devil fruit of any form or kind because it doesn't make any sense. He doesn't have a true human form. And if it was just the human fruit, then why wouldn't he just have a pure human form? Because the full transformation should turn him into a human. So it never really made sense to me on why it was called the human fruit. But now we know, as part of the first bit of this text, that the forest god tamed demons. Isn't that kind of coincidental? Don't you say it's a little bit weird? And why would the forest god have to look like a normal human? Nika doesn't. Nika is cartoony. Granted, that's also because he's freaking rubber, and he can transform anything to rubber, and the only limit to his power is really his imagination, but because he's piloted by an absolute doomcough, he's got rubber. And that's it. But there's also a lot to kind of understand with this. If Chopper wields the human fruit model forest god, whatever the name of the forest god is, because I have simply forgotten it. I cannot remember that far back. I can look it up real quick, and I shall do so. Okay. So the main problem here there's a lot of kind of mixed signals for this one. Okay, so that's not helpful. So there has not been an actual proper title for the forest god. He was only called the god of the forest, or the Mori no Kami. Another thing that a being that was revered as a god on Skypiea by the Shandian people, is the Kashigami, which is just a gigantic snake. So there's not an official translation or an official name for the forest god. But we do know that it appears Chopper ate the forest god devil fruit. That's what it appears. Now, whether that's actually the case or not, we have no clue. We'll find out eventually. I think in the coming chapters, we're going to have a pretty aggressive discovery of what exactly is going on here. So, kind of get back on track because I have a little bit of an ADHD problem. Those of the half moon dreamed, those of the moon dreamed. This heavily implies, at least to me, I could be wrong about this, so take this with a grain of salt. This heavily implies to me the people of the half moon are the Kozuki clan, right? So Oden Kozuki Oden, or however you want to say his name. The Kozuki clan is definitely the people of the half moon. That's what their clan symbol is. It's not just a pheasant; it's also a half moon. So this kind of makes a lot of sense, right? This particular event happens, from what we can kind of guess, 800 years ago. So this is the Void Century taking place right here. And then those of the Moon Dreamed. This one is kind of difficult to pin down, but not as difficult as you may think. Remember, back in Skypiea, this is a long time ago, so forgiveness if you don't remember. Anel's goal was to make his way to the Verth, Vearth, the Verth. And he was determined to go to the moon. Then we find out later on that he manages to actually make his way there, and he comes across yet another mural, which just happens to have the Mother Flame, the 5 elders on it, and a picture of what we can assume is either Emu or Nika. We have no idea. But that implies that the moon, in this instance, is originally a people that were on the moon. That could also be loosely translated to the Lunarians, which makes a lot of sense because, Lunarians. So maybe this is more like, okay, the Lunarians dreamed of the coming of this person, right? Then we have the next line of the second world, the next line of the prophecy, right? Man killed the sun and became God. Now, this is the official translation, but there was a different translation if you actually read the quote unquote spoilers, the people that get it like first, right? The fan translations. The fan translation, which may or may not be accurate, so again, grain of salt. It reads, "Yet the ones who slew the sun deified themselves." Now, that sounds a lot more like those that were the celestial dragons, doesn't it? That kind of lines up more with how the story was going at that point in time. Now, none of them are actually considered, gods. They consider themselves gods, but they're not actually the only one that actually has the power to display that and truly show their mettle is Emu. So knowing that this is more of a betrayal than anything else, right? We continue on with the sentence. So man killed the sun and became God, and the sea god stormed. Now, this is kind of interesting to me because in the first bit of this prophecy here, it says the forest god tamed demons and the sun spread the fires of war. We have the forest god listed, the sun god potentially listed, and we have the sea god listed, and then a false god. So this is really kind of interesting to kind of sit here and talk about. Now there's a different translation for the sea god stormed and the quote unquote spoiler version of this stuff, right? In the fan translation, it says, yet the ones who slew the sun deified themselves, evoking the wrath of the sea god. Now, that kind of has very different connotations, right? This is like a wrath thing. Like, this guy's been around, he hated what happened, so he lost his shit, right? Whereas with man killed the sun and became God, and the sea god stormed implies something very, very different. Stormed implies that this is not the sea god per se, but rather the rain god. Because there is a distinction. The four gods of Skypiea were the sun, rain, forest, and earth gods. So where did the sea god come from? That is a much more difficult thing to kind of nail down, right? So first we have the fan translation, evoking the wrath of the sea god, versus the Shonen Jump translation, the sea god stormed. So the real question is, was Emu the one that killed the sun and became God? Or, because Emu backwards, if you're not aware, is Umi, which translates roughly to the sea. So there's some speculation there, but pretty sure at this point it's not what it is. This implies the existence of a fifth god, or it's a different translation of the term, or it was known differently, not as a sea god, but rather as the rain god to the Skypian people. I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick. Okay. So then we have the last line, of course, and they will never meet. So that means that during this age, the sun god and whoever the evil person is will never meet, right? Then we finally get to the third world, the final of the three worlds that are out here for this particular panel. Within the chaos, there was emptiness. The inconvenient remnants recall the promised day and hear the voice of the half moon. The sun god dances and laughs, guiding the world to its end. The sun returns and brings a new morning, and they will surely meet. Now, if we're talking about the sun returning and bringing a new morning, this can also translate into the sun returns and brings a new dawn. Now, what's interesting about that is, if you remember Kozuki Toki's prophecy to the samurai of Wano, paraphrasing, in 20 years, a group of pirates will show up and they will bring the dawn with them. We know now that that meant Luffy. because he's the sun god Nika. At that time, though, we had no idea. Zero clue whatsoever. Now, let's kind of analyze the text here. Within the chaos, there was emptiness. So, implying a void, the void century. The inconvenient remnants recall the promised day and hear the voice of the half moon. Remember, the half moons are not the Lunarians, they're the Kozuki. The inconvenient remnants. This is interesting to me, because inconvenient implies whoever is reading this out, or whoever's telling this story, right, implies that whoever is around to remember the potential coming of Nika again is inconvenient to the people that wrote this. Now, what does that mean to you? Because to me, that means the inconvenient remnants imply the giants. They imply the mermen and mermaids, the fishmen army, right? They imply the Lunarian people who are no longer around. It implies the Buccaneers who are no longer around. After Kuma, rip that guy. But hearing the voice of the half moon is kind of interesting to me, because the mink people are another people that are mostly forgotten, right? But hearing the voice of the half moon implies something very, very interesting. It implies that the Kozuki, specifically Toki, is from around the time of the Void Century. Because remember, whenever she was first introduced during Odin's flashback, she was moving forward in time, constantly trying to get to what she thought was going to be the actual, she was going to meet the sun god. Thought she was going to meet Nika. And then she fell in love with Odin and realized that's not her destiny. Her destiny is actually to invoke, or rather provoke, the samurai to wait until they have the proper opportunity to take back the land of Wano. And the sun god dances and laughs, guiding the world to its end. So, this seems straightforward overall. It really does. Because the sun god dancing and laughing, that's what Nika does. He brings joy wherever he goes, and that's how he introduces himself. Everything's funny, right? Everything's comical. Guiding the world to its end. Well, currently, the world is the world government, right? That's how we understand. That's how it can be translated. That's how it can be understood. Bringing the world government to its end implies the end of Imu, the Five Elders, the Marines, everything. Everything is gone. Sun returns and brings a new dawn, as in a new age, a new era that would be fantastic. What kind of messes with me, though, is, and they will surely meet. That is the last line of the third world. What kind of drives me crazy here is the fan translation implies something very different. The fan translation for the third world is chaos reigns. The world drifts in a void. Yet time does not erase the memory of the promised day. Its shadow looms as the voice of the half moon echoes through the ages. And once more the sun god shall rise, laughing and dancing, guiding the world to its final act. The sun is reborn, a new dawn will break. Surely, this time, they will meet. So with that kind of like out there, right? That implies pretty heavily that the sun god and Nika, or rather the sun god and Emu, will meet again. But just as easily, that could imply that the sun god Nika and Loki, or rather Loki's devil fruit, the Needhog devil fruit, the dragon fruit model Needhog, or Needhogger, I should say, or however you say it. I don't know how to say it. Gigantic dragon thing at the bottom of the world tree. Look it up. It implies that it could also be a reunion between those two forces, which has happened. So, what does this mean? How far do we go down the rabbit hole? Does it just stop? Does it keep going? Does it eventually just fall apart? I don't know. What I do know is the sun god coming back implies the end of the world. But the first thing that Loki says is that he is the sun god that will bring destruction. I don't know if that particular devil fruit or that particular mythological figure has anything to do with the sun. Let me just look that up real quick. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so in Norse culture, there is a etymology for the words hogr, which is literally hewer, meaning either biter or striker. But the prefix for the name of the devil fruit is not as clear, because it could mean that Nieder means down or downwards, thus biter below or the roots, or Nid, which is a little bit different. It's a social stigma thing, implying like the villain. So like it could also mean like malice biter, but nothing about this implies the actual Delford having anything to do with the sun. What is interesting, however, is that the prefix can also, whenever it's in relation to Swedish, meaning Nedan, the waning face of the moon. Now, what's interesting to me about that, the emerging face or the mountains of waning, the striker of the dark, stuff like that, right? The dark mountains, and other such nonsensical stuff. So, with that kind of in the back of our minds, right? That implies pretty heavily, actually, with kind of an interesting depth, that it could mean that the voice of the half moon is actually Loki. So the inconvenient remnants shall recall the promised day and hear the voice of the half moon. Inconvenient remnants, the giant people, will hear the voice of Loki. The sun god dances and laughs, guiding the world to its end. The sun returns and brings a new dawn, and they will surely meet. Now, with that kind of context, that implies a lot more that the two that are talking about meeting here are not Nika and the dragon devil fruit that Loki has. Or rather, that Emu wields, the devil fruit that Emu wields. It implies pretty heavily that Nika and the dragon devil fruit will meet again. But this time they won't be enemies. They'll be allies. So, let me kind of dig in a little bit deeper there. It's going to be a lot. Stay with me. The first wielder of the devil fruit that Loki wields, right? He fought Nika originally. Extraordinarily powerful. Apparently, it was a great fight. However, Nika won. Obviously, the skull of the ancient giant that wielded this devil fruit is the same skull that Onigashima is made out of. The sword that's in Onigashima is his sword. He didn't wield the hammer that Loki wields. This was before then. That rather stupendously lines up really, really well with the thought of the first world being, okay, Loki's devil fruit and this guy over here, Nika, fought and essentially destroyed and raised and destroyed the world, right? It implies a lot about what that means for, and they will never meet, as the last line for the first and second worlds. After that, there's no more mention of them meeting in either of these prophecies here. So there's, ooh, be on to something. Maybe on something kind of interesting here. Wow. Man, there's a lot to unpack. Okay. The actual podcast portion of this may have to be cut a little bit short, as I am having egregious bowel issues right now. So I'm going to try to wrap up this part in about 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll get to actual gaming and stuff like that, right? Man. There is a lot to unpack. Let me just read off some theories that me and my buddy had about it. Oh, yeah. That's right. see. Trying not to get into too dangerous territory here. Hmm. Well, I'm not really. Really seeing anything that kind of works the way I would like it to there. Anyway. Wrong one. Okay. So kind of summarize the last little bit of my theories before I play anymore. Before I play some games. Or rather before I end the recording aspect of this, and then go on to do some gaming. These are some absolute ridiculous panels here. We now know Brooke has some knowledge of Gunko, the person that in the manga currently. So again, more manga spoilers for those of you who are not caught up in the manga. We now know that Brooke was not only familiar with Gunko, but could have been, potentially, we don't know. But we know that he at least is familiar with Gunko and her father, a king. And apparently she cared enough about Brooke to attempt take control back from Emu so that she could save Brooke. There's so much. There's so much theory. Oh man. I've about talked myself into a circle over here. So we're going to end the recording aspect of this. If you're watching this later on, it's on my YouTube channel, SaltLordNacnud. Then cool. Glad you're here. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to try to do some more like in-depth kind of explaining lore stuff if I can going forward. Whether it be One Piece, whether it be Warhammer 40,000, whether it be Star Wars, whether it be Lord of the Rings, just this is going to end up being a normal kind of like deal for me. I'm going to try to make a solid podcast schedule where every Saturday I'm going to, for the first like 45 minutes to an hour, I want to do a proper like podcast type situation. So eventually we'll have some more guests. We'll have people that can actually sit here and talk with me about this stuff, and my throat won't be burning like a motherfucker. Because I'll actually be able to let them have conversation and talk about stuff. until that time, if you're watching this podcast, then I hope to see you during stream on Saturdays and Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Stream schedule's kind of wonky right now. Sometimes I'm streaming, sometimes I'm not, but I do try to start stream around 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So pretty typical of me to try to start around then. On Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays it fluctuates. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes later on the day, sometimes early in the day, but I try to get on around 1:30, 1 o'clock. As for Saturdays, obviously 1:15 was the number today, about 1:15. But sometimes maybe earlier, sometimes maybe later. We'll have to see. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. I know no one's in the chat right now, as you can clearly tell because of the box right here not fucking doing shit, but well, we'll see. I hope to see you guys there. I really do. Let me know what you guys think about this kind of stuff, because I would love to be able to sit here and talk about your theories, your fan stuff, like what all you enjoy. What theories you have about One Piece, just anime in general, shows, cartoons, movies, you name it. I want to talk about it. Be like a little nerd podcast. You guys help me out a lot with this stuff. You really do. So please, if you enjoyed it, like the video, feel up for it, want to hit the subscribe button. Go right ahead. Or don't. Either one's fine. But I hope you do. Well, if you enjoy the content. If you don't, then thank you for watching until this point, but why are you still here? Anyway, I will see all of you guys next Saturday for the podcast aspect. The stream continues on. SaltLordNacnud /kick.com.